Hey, what's going on, Mary? Q, what's going on? I just saw your chat pop up in here. So we'll give it a couple minutes and we'll get jumping into today's session. We'll do the recap first. Ah, man, I hope y'all are ready for today. It is going to be an experience, I think. If you've never done Docker before, it's going to be new for everyone, I guess. Well, I've done a little bit of Docker, obviously, but haven't done Docker in a very long time. So I'm actually relearning some of the stuff with you all. What's going on, Ryan? I love it. What's up, fam? Yes, glad to have you on. Glad to have you on. All right, we're gonna give a couple minutes here, see if anyone else is going to join. Then we'll jump into the session. If you're looking at my screen right now, it is the Windows box that we set up last time on VirtualBox. So Windows Virtual Machine set up on VirtualBox. Try to run the stuff out of here. We'll see how it goes. I did do a little bit of a cheat beforehand. Sarah, all right. Hold on. Hold on. What happened to Megan? What's going on with Megan? Let me go ahead and shut this box down. Restart. Let me do a restart. All right. So today, we are. Make sure you have your computers ready. I got your response. You know what? I was thinking, and I love to have anyone's feedback on this because, like I said, I've never streamed before. Well, first of all, I was laughing at Megan's response saying this is professional, so she's gonna go with her real name. Or maybe Megan's the real name, and we get the fake name every day. Oh, maybe that's what it is. But anyway, so I was interested in knowing if you all have experience with streaming, is there a better service that maybe doesn't have such um, a delayed response, back and forth with the chat? Because I feel like I talk about things and it takes a good minute for it to go across and come back. So I was thinking maybe Twitch or maybe other stream servers may be a little better for this live interaction. So I don't know. Twitch is much better. All right, now you gotta tell me, Mary, what's your experience with Twitch? How do you know it's better on Twitch? So I'm gonna wait for your response on that because I can't wait to see what you tell me. Because you a gamer or something else, I definitely got to get a shout out on what that channel is. So I can jump on sometimes. I would love to do that. Got to support the fam here, right? Okay, all right. So much better response time. All right, fine. Got you. All right, Mary. That doesn't mean it's not in your book in the future for you, right? It may come up eventually. Oh wow, I don't know what's going on with this Docker desktop. I tried to remove it already. Can't dox. I watch a few peeps. Can't dox them though. All right. To be honest with you, I need y'all help on that one. Can't dox them. All right, got you. But please hit me to the docs name. Mm, never even heard of CLD before, so I definitely got to get on that. I got to figure out what that means. Um, so what I'm trying to do right now is actually remove some of the steps I went through before to install Docker. Oh, Call of Duty. Okay, that makes sense. Call of Duty. There are a couple other people I know are big in. Be honest with you, I just never got really big into games except for one thing, and I have to say I heard it ruined quite a few people's college experience. But the game League of Legends. Yes, yes. Let me get a one in the chat if you played League of Legends or know someone that's played League of Legends. Thank you for the education on that, Mary. Docs. I so revealing their information to the public in a public online space. All right, got you. That makes sense. Yeah, I want to get rid of this, right? I don't. I need you to stop trying to install this stuff. Okay, good. It's uninstalling. Okay, and I apologize about that, Megan, Sarah. I'm sorry. I definitely messed up your identity. I'll take that. I'll take that one. I won't do it again. I apologize. Anybody else want to throw something up? I'm gonna make sure that uh, we leave it at that. Actually, you know what? I just thought about it. No, go back and watch the recording. I think Megan told us it was Sarah in the last chat. I ain't gonna take that one. No. All right. Yeah, you're right. She got the right definition. Okay. All right. Finally, this VM I set up is a little laggy, and that's because of my host machine. Ha! Thank you for that confirmation, Mary. Yes. So I'm gonna call you Megan anyway. I just really like the name Megan. Told you, Key and Peele all day. All right, all right, all right. I see what's happening. Yes. You can dox yourself. I dox myself all the time. I used to have a handle I wanted to go by. If anyone can tell me what that is, we'll find out what kind of kudo points you can get for that. What handle I did want to go by. So I'm gonna tell you, there is a YouTube channel with my face on it, with the handle I used to want to go by. Aaron, I got another Key and Peele fan up in here. All right, got you. All right, y'all. So looks like it's just gonna be us tonight. Talked to a couple of people from the last stream, and they were like, "Oh man, they were wiped out." I know some of my true soldiers on here, Mary, you were wiped out, but you came back for the second round, so I appreciate that. Um, and I will say, answer Ron, no, it's not that, but I like it. But yeah, so today, real quick, like I said, it's gonna be mostly hands-on, but I do want to recap some of the things we went over. And one other thing, I sent the email. I would have what is the thing called a blog ready for you. I'll be honest with you, the blog did not happen yet, but I am. I'm putting myself to the test. I'm going to have it out this weekend, and I'll be able to email you all once it is up and running. It'll be a quick blog spin up, so please forgive me for that. But the blog, what we're looking to have on the blog is really just some cliff notes of what happened in the each session, right? So it'll be a blog entry for each session we have, and it'll be done. I mean, once a week, I should be able to manage that with everything else balancing. So yeah, but that being said, last time we spoke, we installed VirtualBox, which you're looking at the image, the virtual machine that I installed on my VirtualBox once I installed VirtualBox itself. And the reason why I'm showing this one is because I used Windows to try to relate to most of the public and show you how it works on the Windows end of things. But yeah, what we covered last time, I'm gonna kind of start in reverse, right? Reason why is because the last thing we spoke about was a swap. Does anybody remember what the swap is for? What does that relate to? A swap or a page file. So a swap file or a page file. Please, please, somebody give me an idea. You can tell me what part of the computer hardware it interacts with or supports, or just a quick brief, you know, clip on what you remember. So I give it a little countdown. Five, four, a three, a two, and a one. Okay, cool. It's all good. So the swap. So remember, the swap is swapping space between RAM and hard drive, right? And the reason why we brought this up is because I wanted to mention to you all when it comes to running a virtual environment with a hosted virtual a hosted hypervisor like VirtualBox or VMware, there are times when your machine may be pushing the limits of its ability to multitask and making use of the RAM. So it leverages a swap or a page file, mostly swap these days. It's going to leverage the swap. And that's a good point, Mary. I apologize. I'm trying to deal with the lag and still talk. Google says temp file. I appreciate that, Sarah. I'm getting feedback on from y'all. Thank you. So the swap manages the swapping of space, right? Just remember the word itself kind of tells what it does. It swaps one item from RAM into the hard drive or vice versa, right? So it says, hey, um, this process in the RAM isn't as it doesn't have a priority as high as the one you're trying to activate now for multitasking. So say you run another application, it'll say if you just click that application, it has priority. So it's going to try to jam it into RAM, and it'll move something out of RAM into the swap space, which sits on your. Excuse any noise you may hear. My son's doing the dishes, so we got to work on that. But anyway, yeah, so the swap is moving from RAM to hard drive space. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's what it does. It does that part. Now, if you remember the main component that can hinder communication between your CPU, your RAM, and your hard drive, actually there's two types of components, right? It's your chipset. All right, you say you need to visualize this swap. You know what, Sarah? I told myself it'd be a 10, 15 minute recap, but if you need to see it, let's go ahead and see it. Good night, son. My son going off to bed. All right. Ain't got to go to sleep, but he got to go to bed, right? So let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to see if I can bring up this application and get it to work and pull it on screen. So this one is called Inkscape. I'm going to bring up now. And let me go ahead and bring it onto screen. Okay. And then I am going to edit the document. I think it does. Yeah. Okay, cool. Still has my pin set up. And then let's go ahead and close this. And then document properties. Bring this on screen. This is not a part of the lesson. This is just what I do. So I'm giving myself a little pad to draw on for you. All right. So excuse me. I'm going to try to do this as well as I can. Sarah. Don't be judging my drawing skill. I know I can't draw squirrel girl or squirrels like you. I'm gonna try my best to do this. So once again, a swap. So typically when you have, let's just say you have your hard drive, okay, and I think we used to do it with a circle and a little thing right here. So we're gonna call this the hard drive part. Oh, I did not want to do that, so let's undo. That's the wrong one. Undo. And then let's say I'm going to go up here. Okay. Call this the. No problem, Sarah. So this is going to be our HH hard drive. And I know it's closing it. I apologize. I might need to do a text box. But anyway, you know it's the hard drive, right? So when it comes over RAM, we sometimes look at like this. It's like a little cone. And it's going to have little registries in your RAM. So this is kind of how we picture a RAM, okay? So let's say the hard drive, if you look at a hard drive, we're going to draw a big box here. Hard drive is sectioned off into partitions. So let's say you have your operating system takes this much space, okay? Um, and then you section off for storage the rest of it but you might want to put this much as swap. And let's say this amount, and we're going to try to draw again to, well, actually, I said 8, right? So let's do an 8. 8 GB of space. Okay, so at 8 GB. So, so I hope this worked for you all. So let's say the RAM right here, right? So whenever you run a process, you're putting more stuff into the RAM. So you open the application, say you open, I can't even think of something that I can actually draw, but let's just say as a Word document, right? So you open Word, it's going to push into RAM, and then it's going to take all of the space it currently has. Let's say it's already filled up at 100%. It's going to say, well, this registry or these two registries, and I'll try to draw around the two registries. So let's say this is one and this is the other registry. It will say, hey, this belongs to one application, it's no longer being used, and they'll put it into the hard drive. Hey, hey, I don't know how I'm supposed to take that. That's a pretty good emoji you got going right now with my scribble scrabble on the screen. So what it'll do, it'll say, okay, it needs two of the registries from RAM, and it will place Word. And let me get some color. Where do I do the color at on it? Here we go. So let's say, and that is not what I wanted to do. I'm gonna get a better program for this next time because I have not used this very often. But let's say this and this one. Okay, let's say those are blue. All right, so that's the one moving out. So it's going to move into here. We're going to draw. If you don't, if you do want a better sketch program, I can recommend you some other free options. I would appreciate that, Mary, because this is a vector program, and I don't think it's as fluid as some of the other programs I've used before. But anyway, so yeah, so it pops this in like I was doing before. And I could just probably just use a mouse at this point. It just does, it puts this as blue as well. That's a new space. And this now becomes the Microsoft program, which we're going to say is purple. Okay. So that's kind of what ends up happening. It switches from blue to purple and is and is we're swapping the stuff out. So that's what the swap does. I hope that helps you out, Mary, but that's the best I can give you is moving in and out of this hard drive space. That's a swap. All right. So I want to do more, but I'm gonna close this before I make myself look like a bigger fool trying to draw live on TV, live on YouTube. All right, so but that's it. So that was the swap that we covered, and then the two components we were saying before, and I think I still have those diagrammed up here, which is a north and south bridge of the chipset, are what impacts your ability to transfer data from the CPU to the RAM and to the hard drive. So your speed of your host machine is sometimes not just because you don't have up-to-date CPU or RAM. Sometimes it could be just because your chipset needs to be updated, and you might get even better performance out of your CPU or your RAM after updating your chipset, which is also known as your motherboard. So that's one way to look at it. Um, It's just memory use is not an actual file. So yeah, it was. Well, the reason why it's considered a file, Sarah, and I can show you what it looks like for this one, my computer I have now. It is actually a file that we create. So this is my terminal in my host machine because I run Linux. So if I get out of here, it actually is a file, right? So let me clear this screen. Um, just go back to my home directory clear. If I do, what is this, swap on, and if I don't remember, this is what I usually do, is do man swap on. This is a little Linux lesson in the middle of it. So you got swap on options. You can see what you can do. So all. So I can do dash A for all devices, um, label options show. Okay, so I want to do show, I believe. So let's try show. So I can show you what my file looks like. Show. There you go. So Sarah, to answer your question, if you're looking on the screen here, you'll see where it says swap / swap file, and it is a type of file. Yeah, I do use GIMP, but I've never heard of the other two applications, so I'll definitely check those out. All right. All right, so Mary, I hope this answers your question here when it talks about the whether it's a file or not. It actually is a file, um, but the file is like a set of instructions. I'm sorry, the file is the part that is segmented off inside of your hard drive. So it actually goes into that file on your hard drive when you're moving stuff in and out. So like I drew earlier, it is a dedicated space. This little box. It's a dedicated space in your hard drive, which is a file. All right, cool. So I got confirmation of the dab emoji or dab icon up here, so I appreciate that. All right, cool. Um, yeah, other than that, we talk about a host, difference between a host machine and a virtual machine. The virtual machine just uses the resources of the host machine. And we also talk about hypervisors. You have the bare metal. Um, how long? Well, real quick. So we also had the bare metal and you had the hosted hypervisors. We talked about that yesterday. I think we touched on the fact that the reason why we use virtualization is because it not only saves money, um, when it comes to reducing management costs, but it also gives you, well, sorry, it saves money and it just makes it a more focused central area to manage all your machines. So it doesn't save you money per se with the equipment or the hardware all the time because you got to think about it. You're buying much faster and larger CPUs. You're buying much faster and larger, more efficient motherboards. You're buying better RAM. You're buying because you have to divvy those resources up among all the virtual machines. So it doesn't save you any costs with the hardware, but it saves you costs in the other aspects, the not quantifiable, but the quality base, and I can't remember what that's called, of how you work around the type of machines you need. So how long does this file? Honestly, it's accessible as long as you have it on there. You can all in Linux, like I said, I do mostly Linux. I could talk about it. Linux, you could turn it off whenever you want to, and therefore your swap will no longer run. That means if you hit 100% of your RAM at any given time, then the next activity you try to do to load that loads into RAM will do one of two things. It will either tell you it won't run or it'll crash your system. So the two options it has at that point, either not to run the activity because you're full at 100% RAM, or it'll crash the entire system and it'll try to run it. All right, cool. All right, well, excuse me, real quick. I apologize. Sinuses. All right, so Um, that being said, let's go and jump into today. So that's kind of like the hot stuff I wanted to touch on from last time. Today we're going to jump into VirtualBox. We're going to set up the virtual machine. So I sent the email out to everyone that's in the listing to please download two things. You want to download CentOS 9 Stream, which I gave you the link, but I'll walk you through how I got there because it's not all that simple when you go to the website. So if I go to CentOS download, let's see what Bing brings back. Yep. All right. So we go to download. So it's going. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow steps I'm doing now. The package I have you downloaded is a very small package, so it should not take very long. So what I just did, I clicked on the Stream 9, and just to explain this to you real quick, I want to make sure you understand what's happening. You have architectures. So architectures really relate to the chipset you run on your board, your motherboard. Uh, ARM 64 is typically what mobile devices, the ARM architecture, the IBM Power. Honestly, I haven't had much experience with that one, but the one you typically look for is x86 or x86 underscore 64. x86 usually represents a 32-bit architecture on your computer, and also the way your operating system is set up is 32 bits. And 64 is if it has 64 associated to it, it's the 64-bit architecture for your operating system, and that's all you're looking for typically. So instead of clicking this will send you. If you look in the bottom the bottom left-hand side of my screen, you see where it gives you the redirect, the ISO redirect.centos.org slash center. And if you all are not familiar with the browser, these are things you'll learn as you go. But pay attention whenever you hover over a link, it gives you what the link destination is in the bottom left hand corner of most browsers. So it'll show you where you're going. But this is going to send you to a download directly. If we go to RPMs, it'll send you to the repository page, which is a folder listing like your local computer will have. And in here, you can select from this. Now, I just guess at things. I told you I break stuff all the time, right? I'm just clicking on stuff and I go through. I spent 10 minutes trying to figure out how to tell you all which ISO to download for this thing today. So base OS is the first thing I looked at, and I'll click on it now. I was like, oh, okay, well, go in here. I'll follow through OS because I found the 64. Okay, and then at this point, I'm like, okay, well, this looks kind of like, and you all have probably never seen this before, but this is kind of like what a USB live DVD would have on it when you're actually installing the operating system directly on your hardware. These are like all the packages that are necessary to install the version of Linux you're doing. So I was like, this is definitely not what I want. Then I went back out. I was like, let me try a different thing, not base OS. I went down and I saw ISOs. So I'm gonna click on ISOs. I see my 64-bit folder again. And when did you know it? We now have, and I just realized I clicked on 8 instead of 9. Let me go back over here. I apologize. I meant to put stream, then 9 RPMs. All right, so, and this is going to change the story a little bit. So that was 8. So this one I do base OS. And then go to ISOs. And that's how I got to the boot OS, the boot ISO I told you to download. It's 758 megabytes. I know a lot of people had a problem downloading the Kali Linux last time we spoke. I wanted to give you something a lot smaller to work with because there is an alternative. If you see here, and I spoke to Ryan earlier today, and I told him the same thing. If you download just the link that says x86 underscore 64, it actually downloads this first, the 7.9 gigs. We don't have time for that, and honestly, I don't know how much space you have on your computer. 7.9 gigs might, I don't know, blow it up for all I know, but it wouldn't literally blow up. But I went with a smaller size, right? So I just tell everyone to download this. So I'm gonna download it again because I'm actually on the Windows box, and it says it takes about 1 minute to download this. So I'm gonna download it with you all. So in the chat, let me know how many people have already downloaded the ISO. Give me a one. Give me a two in the chat if you downloaded ISO and already installed it on VirtualBox. I know I got some people that really jump ahead in here. All right. There you go. Man, Ryan. All right. Coming through. You already up and running. You did your thing already. So we're going to check out how you did your setup in a moment. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you downloading it. Mine is finished already. For those who are downloading with me, I'm going to go and jump ahead. No, not the Kali one, the CentOS for today. Kali, if you are going to want to do the extra stuff in a little bit here, I definitely recommend Kali. Already have downloading it, even if it's from last time. I recommend if you haven't set it up yet to set up Kali. We'll revisit as much as we can. And when I was thinking myself, and if you're cool with it, we can actually do a separate, completely separate section um, for the pen testing and the cyber stuff, right? Because these are mainly for basics and understanding how to use technology. And I do want to start having conversations around how does this play a role in the professional area, the professional realm, which we'll talk about in just a moment here once we get everything running. So Now that we have it downloaded, even if you started with me, we should be finished by now. We're going to do new, and then we're going to give it a name. So this one, don't be creative. Do something that you're going to remember. All right. If you want to get creative, go for it. But if you just don't want to think about it too much, just go for something basic, right? So I'm just going to do CentOS. Now, the beautiful thing about VirtualBox and most other systems like VMware, it recognizes that it's when you type the name in it, it kind of knows these names and it says, hey, that's a Linux distro if you put the right name into it. Of course, you don't have to. You could do Ricardo's Jank. I don't know. I don't even know what jank even means. I just put it in there, okay? But it's gonna say other. See what I'm talking about? It doesn't recognize it. It's a pretty smart system, right? And I am gonna leave Ricardo's jank up in here. I don't know what that even means, but we're gonna leave it in here. Now, actually, I should take that out. Janky computer. All right, let's Coputo. Okay, computer. All right, so we'll do Ricardo's janky computer is the name of my VM. All right. This. So this is where it's going to store your virtual machine. Now, for any advanced users that have, or even if you're not advanced user, if you just have an external hard drive that you're backing stuff up to, this is where you want to go through the steps of locating your hard drive, the drive letter for that external hard drive, and ensure you have a path to that external hard drive, and they'll save it there. Okay. Another thing you can do instead of doing it here if you want to make sure that every time you do a VM, because it's kind of like per use, but if you want to do like every time you do a virtual machine, if you go to File and go to Preferences, you do General, right? So this is the default folder, and this will apply to every future installation of a virtual machine. So if you have a separate hard drive, if you have a separate partition on the current hard drive that you have, not even an external one, just inside your internal workings, then you can go here and do that. Okay. So back to what I was doing. So I got Ricardo's janky computer. All right. All right. Here, because I did that, I'm gonna have to tell it it's a Linux, and I'm gonna tell it it is a Red Hat, and it is a 64-bit. And actually, you know what? That is interesting. It's actually limiting me because I did that, I believe. Let me go back. Never did. See, look, learn something new. Let's see if I do CentOS and see if it gives me the other option again. Oh, it was 32-bit. Okay, cool. So what's the problem with this? And this is what I run into because of my architecture. I did not notice it said 32-bit earlier. So this tells me that the way I have my Windows virtual machine will not support 64-bit. So I have to change the actual virtual machine I'm currently on. So if it's cool with you all, I can flip over to my host machine and finish this process there, okay? Because I don't really have time to. Let me see if I can do it from here. No, that's not gonna let me do it here. Okay. I need to. Well, actually, before I do this, did anyone else run into that issue where it's showing 32-bit only? I gotta stop the video. Okay, Mary, that's good to know. That's good. That's good. That means you have the proper chipset for this. It does not matter which. Well, I kind of wanted to walk you through CentOS, and I'll tell you the reason why. First of all, Red Hat, you get trial versions, um, and Red Hat. actually has its own unique setup where you have to register with Red Hat on the actual virtual machine itself when you install it. So you have to install a couple of packages to even connect to the repository to download what you need. And that's done through a registration and stuff like that. So you have to register the Red Hat. But if you have Red Hat, you know how to do it, go for it. And I chose CentOS because the last time we spoke about it, CentOS is a uh, direct descendant. Well, actually, it feeds into Red Hat. So think of CentOS and even Fedora as the open community version of Red Hat. And Fedora is kind of like unstable version where they do all the experimentation, it's the experimental version of Red Hat in a sense, and it's like way ahead of what Red Hat is going to, if it ever reaches there, right? Um, and then CentOS is the community version that is as secure as Red Hat, and that's why I chose to do CentOS. Because if you learn CentOS, if you ever get into a professional environment, you'll be a lot you already be acclimated with the type of commands you'll run, the type of configuration you'll see in Red Hat. That's why I chose to do CentOS. So trying to look ahead, but it doesn't matter today because we're just installing, right? So if you want to use this time to install Kali, go for it. But of course, what I'm showing you right now is not going to work for you, right? But it's up to you, Ryan. Now, like I said, I can stop this machine and we can see if I remember how to fix the chipset. This is a UTC. Oh, okay. I apologize, Ryan. You were saying that if you, okay, it doesn't matter which Linux, um, I get what you're saying. When you actually create a new machine, I'll do it real quick. You're talking about the version. So you're saying if you do this and then CentOS and then Red Hat is what's going to default. So you want to stick with that. If you choose another one, honestly, I'm not even sure about that. I'll be honest with you, I never explored that before, so it's something I gotta look up. But of course, you always have the option for other Linux. You can also choose one of those as well. But it has options here. I just don't know how bad. I think it's like, um, I want to say impacts the. It's going to impact, if I'm understanding correct, it's going to impact the way it loads the extensions. But I might be wrong about that. But that's just what I feel is going to happen. It's going to give you. It may impact the way you load your extensions when you actually run the virtual machine the first time and install the extension packs. All right. So I'm glad I got that. I understand what you're saying now, Ryan. All right, cool. So I'm gonna see if I can fix this real quick and see if I can run it. So if I go to System, Processor, all right, Enable Extended Features, Nested. I want to say this is what I need, but it's not letting me do that. All right, we'll try this one though. PAE and Accelerated. I don't think I need that one. Chipset. No, I'll leave it there. US tablet, pointing device. Okay. Enable, yeah, special. No, I don't want that one. Okay, so right now what I'm doing, I'm messing with the what I was talking about before, the chipset and the north and south bridges and stuff like that. Basically, what I'm doing now is messing with some of the configuration to figure out which one's going to unlock the 64-bit options with the virtual machine within the Windows version I'm running. And it might be a Google thing. Let's try it out just for a second to see if I can find anything else. General, advanced. I do want to get that eventually, but we'll worry about that later. Nope, don't need to encrypt disk. Okay, let's see if I can fix this real quick. So we're going to talk about this in just a second anyway. See if this fixes it. So run this. I appreciate your patience. Should load up in just a second here. Everything we do is learning. Oh, you know what? What I was thinking about before is I wish I run into this issue. I wish I had recorded the issue I had loading this Windows box before you all came on. So, interestingly enough, I had an issue in a situation with the Windows box that we're looking at now where it would not boot. Now, I don't know if I explained it to you before, but with my current computer, I have make sure nothing's on here I don't want you to see, right? But I have this kind of setup where I have multiple hard drives actually in my box, in my custom box I made. So I have an external terabyte. I have a hard drive I keep encrypted, and I have two additional hard drives, right? And they're running two different file systems, and I did that for a reason. But either way, so I keep all my VMs on here. So what this means is I don't have it loaded by default when I restart my computer. So I restarted my computer and these were all shut down. So they wouldn't run. Now the problem is that all my VMs are located on this drive, right? On this setup. And that meant when I did my virtual machine, all these were like red out. They were red X, and it was like, oh, I can't see anything. They don't exist. And I'm like, okay, well, let me go ahead and fix it, right? So I was like, oh, I know what to do. I booted up my hard drives. I was like, okay, let's mount the drives, the proper terminology. So I mounted my drives, and then I just clicked refresh on all of them. But the problem was Windows still had a red X, and I was like, what is going on? I mounted the drive, it should see it. So I click on it, and of course, it takes like 2 or 3 clicks before I realize that there's an error. I probably should be reading it every time I click it, but I'm just ignoring it at first. Then I thought I was going to be smart, and I was going to be like, oh, um, let me copy and paste this little link. I'm sorry, this error message and put it into the Google, and it gave me no results. I was like, well, it gave me results, but it was like it didn't help any, right? I did what it said. Then I realized there was another message at the very top of the virtual machine manager, and it said that could not mount or could not access. It gave a UUID, which is your unique identifier for your disk and that load up on your machines. And it gave a unique identifier saying, hey, we can't load this one because it already exists. So kind of find out, all I had to do was go into the Vbox file, and I'll show you that just for a second, what the Vbox file looks like, right? So like I said, this is located on my media directory, tacit, and and it is case sensitive, so free all, okay? And then new VMs. Okay. And then in here, I have the Windows. Okay. So let's CD into Windows. And then here I have the VBox. So you see the VBox right here under logs. So let me go ahead and do a VM into Windows. I'm showing what I did to fix it, just in case you have a similar situation that pop up, right? So I'm just going to do VBox, enter. So what I end up having to do is right here where it says DVD images, this was the error we were getting. It had two entries here. So this is one that's legitimate. And then it had another one that was right below it. Okay. It's actually good I did this as well because one question I had was maybe I loaded a 32-bit ISO, but obviously right here it says it's 64-bit ISO is what this Windows machine is behind it. So that's not the problem. So it has to do something, it has something to do with the configuration. So now that I've looked at that and I tried to a little tweak on the motherboard setting for VirtualBox, let's see if it works. Not sure. Okay, don't need that. Nope. All right, that's a Google situation. So we'll Google that later. We'll Google that later, and I will put that up later. Okay. So let's stick with what we have here that does work. So I'll leave that up and running. I already did CentOS, but I'll do it again to walk you through the steps. So like I said, we're going to do it for my host machine, Ricardo's. And I did see a question. Why is it 542? Are you talking about the Windows machine? This? Okay, so that's a good question. Let's take a look at the time adjustment. All right. because I never set it. Set time automatically. And the UTC is not turned. Oh, that's what it is. It is. It's set for Pacific. That's why. So I just never set it, Ryan. But good eye, good question there. You can always set it whenever you want to, and I think it's like Eastern. I think I already passed it. I'm so used to looking for New York, I forget to look for Eastern. So Eastern Island, Central Time, Eastern Time. Here we go. All right, did it make you feel better, Ryan? It now says 8:47. All right, cool. And I'm gonna do Linux, and now I'm gonna choose Red Hat 64-bit. Doesn't make a difference. Hit next. Right here is where you're gonna set your amount of RAM. Now this one is completely based on how much RAM you have available on your host machine, right? So this one is pretty good at telling you where you're maxed out at. So this red area is a no-no, right? You want to stay in the green, the kind of pinkish area before his red. And I don't think it's actually red, but I'm just saying it is red. But this area is kind of like borderlining, right? But anything here is good to go. And this is per instance of a virtual machine. It does not take into account how many virtual machines are currently running when you're creating it. So every time you create a machine, you have to be aware as to how much RAM you give it, and be aware of that whenever you're running more than one machine. So if you got 8 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of RAM and you're giving 4 gigs to each of them, then if you run two, you're at 8 gigs already, which is half of your RAM for your machine. Typically, your machine needs this one is saying it needs roughly about 5 gigs to be stable, right? Anything past 5 gigs, it starts to get a little hairy. So I'd like to do 2 gigs for mine. All right. Now, you always want to create a virtual hard disk unless you're downloading a virtual hard disk from like a repository online somewhere. Okay. So this one, we're going to create one. If you had an existing one, you can also just load it up here and find it. But I pretty much always create one. All right, so I did a little bit of research for you on this one, right? And this is uh, discussing the hard disk file types you can have with VirtualBox. So VDI is proprietary to VirtualBox itself. It is a very flexible hard disk image that actually converts easily. Um, I'm sorry, well, VirtualBox reads all the image types. That's what I'm going to say. But the VDI is actually an image type just for VirtualBox itself, which is actually pretty flexible. It allows for dynamic or fixed scaling, fixed sizing. VHD and VMDK are very similar. VHD was actually created by Windows, from my understanding. Microsoft created this one, and then VMDK is the second version VHD, the evolved version of it, and both of them support dynamic and or fixed hard drive scaling. But I always go with VDI. It just seems more flexible. But VirtualBox can actually handle any hard disk type I've come across so far. So the ones you create with VMware or the ones you create with Windows doesn't make a difference. Now, dynamic or allocated, I think we talked this last time. You want to make sure you do dynamic if you just are doing this for the fun of it. If you're actually like really wanting to run a cluster of machines and you want real performance out of it, they recommend doing fixed. It just allows for it to store, it allows for it to make use of your resources on your host machine a lot better because it doesn't have to go through the calculation of how much space is left. It knows right away you have this much space to put in there, and it just has to say how much is on that particular partition versus it saying how big can the partition be and how big is it currently. So it's one less calculation it has to do if you do fixed. So it does increase performance. And they have said it's noticeable performance. And then this one is the size. You can do because it's dynamic. It doesn't matter what you really select as a max, as long as you keep an eye on it. So I can do 64 for all I care, right? And at this point, you're just going to go into settings, You're going to click on storage. And I'm going to make sure you follow this. Go to the disk, the empty place. And you're going to select this. And you are going to choose, I picked the wrong one again, choose a disk file. Now I save all mine as one location, and I'm going to find the CentOS 9 stream. That's a 7 gig. No, that's a 7 megabytes, I believe. Let me double check. Oh, here it is. All right. So this is the 750 megabytes, the one you should have now. And that's pretty much it. One thing I do tell everyone to do is for booting purposes, you really want to make your hard drive after you load it. The hard drive should be first. So the next time around, we'll do this. We don't really need a floppy disk. Doesn't make a difference. We don't need it. If you want to add additional core, you can, but we're not going to do a lot of work with this. So it doesn't make a difference. Leave it like it is. This one comes with enable PAE by default because it's a Linux box, and we have nothing else to change here. So display, they always recommend going all the way up to 128, and I believe it does this change after we load um, the extension pack on it anyway. But this is what I recommend doing 128. Number of monitors, I've never gone past one, but if you can support it, go for it, I guess. I would do some reading. I haven't done deep dive into everything here, okay? Um, but for the most part, these are some basic stuff you want to look at. The memory is important for scaling. Um, and I think that is pretty much it. One other thing I do also is once you enable the extension pack that we did on the Windows box last time, and you do it for this one as well, you can do a clipboard. I do bi-directional. Drag and drop I pretty much never use, but I always do clipboard. And then the very last thing I do is shared folders, where I can load up my external hard drive. So if there are any downloads I want to do, I could just have it on here, right? Um, so yeah, then you do read only, auto mount. It doesn't make a difference if you select this now. You can always mount it later, but I could do auto mount for it, and then you can choose a mount point if you want to. I'm just gonna let it select on its own. Um, that's it. So hit OK. All right. And one other thing I forgot to do was the network. Now we talked about this last time. I did put breaker 2 on here. That's all I really need is one of them. I could do as many as I want at this point, but you can only attach up to 4 virtual network cards for any virtual machine. Okay, so if you add more than 4, you can only select up to 4. All right. All right, I think that is it. That's all the things I usually do with my virtual machine. And let's go to start. We can do start up here as well. All right, cool. All right, let me bring this on the screen. I will get rid of this one because we don't need this anymore. So remove, delete all files. Always do that. All right. And this is what we're going to look at. Now, with CentOS products, Red Hat distro based, I did notice that it usually capture your mouse inside of the box. No worries. If you're on your keyboard, the right control button is what they call the host key. If you hit the host key, it will release your mouse to go back outside. So if you have any problems with that, hit the right control key for VirtualBox, and it'll put you back in your host mode. So I'm going to go ahead and capture, okay, and then let's install 9. All right, and I'm making an executive decision. I'm going to use that 30 minutes just to do the Docker part of this. And these same steps, if you want to do the Kali, I was recommending you do this afterwards with the Kali ISO you have as well. So Ryan, you said you already installed this. Did you have any troubles doing any of the installation steps? Did you run into any? Did you make any mistakes? All right, and just wait for it to start up. It's almost there. Okay, so first thing it does is it asks you for your keyboard layout. There are a number of keywords. Okay, I got to the part where you have to enter the root password. Got you. Okay, so I'm going back to capture. Now, the first thing we do is accept the United States keyboard layout unless you have a preference. You can scroll through, do whatever you want. I'm gonna stick with what I know. You didn't go past. Come on, Ryan, break some stuff, man. Break some stuff. Try it out. All right, so good thing about this is way beyond what it used to be. This has become so user friendly, it's crazy, right? They give you icons to tell you what you need to look at. They do they load a lot of stuff for you automatically, and I'll show you what I mean by load stuff because there's a software selection in the middle that it used to not have things already preloaded. If you did not pay attention to it, it would load you in just a terminal screen, which is just a black and white command line interface. It'll load you into the command line interface. You had to know what packages to install and how to get it going, right? But luckily, we don't go through that anymore, right? So what you'll notice is it has a little warning sign over the drive device. I click on that, and then I'm not going to do anything else. It's already selected. I don't have to do anything else. I'll just hit done. And I never understood why they make you check that, but that's all you have to do. Simple as that. It's done, right? What I do tell, what I will tell you to do is always check this out, right? So you have the server option, and server with GUI. GUI is graphical user interface. That is the box you're looking at right now. All these pretty windows, all the pretty colors. That is what this does for you. So we're going to leave it on GUI, right? Because that's what most people are familiar with. But we're going to learn terminal as we go. That being said, I do want to prep with just a few additional softwares. First of all, system tools, and it gives you a short description of what it is. So you want to look at it. I'm not worried about security tools right now, and then not development, container management, no. But it'd be cool to have. We could do that later. And then I want to say network servers. And then the last thing I want to do is DNS. Now, I'm not picking these things right now for any particular reason. I just want to be able to use this box for when we start doing the DNS lesson. And like I said, I'm using CentOS for pretty much everything we do because I want this to be transferable to the workplace. So let's hit done. Now we selected those softwares. Date and time already shows New York, so that's the correct time zone for me. Um, and then security profile. So this is really cool. Um, CentOS, Red Hat, and pretty much any distro of Linux can have this, but CentOS and Red Hat come with it already available and ready to build out. So what a security profile is a already determined and constructed hardening steps. All right, so I just saw I got a chat from Mary. Mine says fatal. No boot medium found. System halted. Yeah, that would be a bad thing. Now, I do have to ask Mary if you're seeing that. Did you go through the steps of going to settings and selecting your ISO? Let me go back to that real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about. Because it sounds if it says no bootable medium found, it sounds like either you have a bad ISO file. Um, and let me ask this question: is this one that you've already installed previously, and you're trying to load it up now, and it has no bootable medium, or is this something that you just recently uh, downloading and trying to run through at the same time with me. Because it's the second option, I would say check your settings, and I'll show you on this one. Check your settings, go to storage, and make sure you selected that disk right here. And make sure you did this and selected the proper file. Okay, got you. So yeah, this is what these are steps I would tell you to do. If you're doing the one we're doing right now, make sure you go through this step. Close down this, stop the machine you're currently on that you tried to run, and go through these steps again. Go to settings and select storage, hit the disk, and hit the drop down and select your ISO file. And make sure it's the ISO file you want to use. And hit cancel. I'm gonna hit cancel here, and then hit OK, and it'll load that disk up for you. And then just start it again. So I'll wait for your feedback to see if that's where you left off. Okay. Maybe see what you got from there. Um, okay. So back to what I was saying about security profiles. So security profiles are actually already pre-configured, pre-constructed settings that you want to apply to your machine, whether it be virtual machine or not, which typically most machines these days are virtual anyway. And what it does is they consider hardening the box. That basically means it strips out all the unnecessary configurations that could make you vulnerable, such as closing certain ports, turn off certain services. All that is constructed for you in what they call a security profile. And it uses something called a open SCAP, I believe is what it is. And I can actually pull it up on my browser now, and I'll bring it on the screen in just a second. And I did see there's a comment. Give me 1 second, I'll bring it up while I bring this up. Uh, okay, yeah, so it's showing this CentOS disk memory. Yeah, what I would say is at this point is if you can, check the download, make sure the download was complete. It's reading the full 756 megabytes. If that still doesn't work, honestly, I would say that you might need to just restart your VirtualBox. Maybe it's just an issue with VirtualBox itself. That just means close it out and open it back up. At the very most, you have to restart your computer. So I would say just hang on in there. I would say stay with this for right now, and then we can walk through the steps again unless you want to restart. It's up to you. And if you have another ISO file, like I said, you can follow the steps. It's going to be a little different, but it's totally up to you if you want to just see how VirtualBox works. Um, so this is an open SCAP. So this is where you can download profiles from. It gives you a URL. You can load it yourself. So I think it's pretty cool. They thought about that when they built this out. So that's what this part is for. Me personally, never really use it because if you don't know what you're doing, you could turn off features you will expect to work. And if anyone's ever installed a Windows server, it's kind of like that, where like with Windows Server, when you first install, you have to accept, you have to tell it pretty much any website you go to that it's okay to go to those websites. You have to build those out for the server. And a security profile kind of does that same does that same thing, except it could be anywhere. If you put the wrong profile, you could tell it that it can't load certain services, which means you can't run certain processes. All that can happen. So it's really something I would say put some thought into before you start playing around with that. And make sure you do it in a test environment first. So if something does go wrong, you can always start back over, right? All right, so root password. This is where you're saying you stopped at Ryan, and let's go ahead and make a very, very weak password. I'm gonna do password one. Yes, I'm telling everyone my password because guess what? It's my virtual machine is a test box and I do nothing with it, right? Um, so you can also tell it to lock the root account, which doesn't really hurt much for you because you're going to create an account as an admin, but you can lock the root account. So what that does is no one can actually access the machine as root, and you have to override that later. Oh, ran into not enough space. Okay, so you got through the issue with the medium not being found, and now you run into a space issue. Ah, yeah, yeah. The question here is how much space did you give your virtual machine? And is that a message in the virtual machine or a message on your host machine? See, now we get into those differences between host and virtual. It's really important to understand those. So I'll wait for your response on that. But yeah, so allow root SSH login with password. No, we're going to lock the account. We're going to take that feature off, and we're going to hit done. Now, that's what you would do if you're really being really secure. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and follow through on this. Of course, you could choose to leave it on. It's a test box. Doesn't make a difference. But me personally, I'm like, hey, if I mess something up, I can always start over. All right, so I'm gonna do tester as always, my username. So this is what I was saying. We're gonna make this an administrator. Oh, you texted me. I apologize. Did not see that. All right, so we got stuck somewhere with someone else. Let me see. Megan. Now I appreciate the screenshot too. That was a good idea. So she sent me a message on my cell number. Okay. So yeah. So that's what. So I don't know how much space you have on your machine. The So the recommendation 4 MB, that is definitely not going to be enough, right? Was it 4 MB or 4 GB? I have to be clear on that. I don't think it's 4 gigs either, but if it was 4 megs, that is pretty much just enough to like load the bootable stuff. 4 megs is all that does. Because you gotta keep in mind, you're actually going, and I actually should have, before I deleted it, I could have showed you what it's gonna look like after. But yeah, 4 MB is not gonna be enough, Mary, to actually install everything that comes after this. Because the way this works is, just so you're aware, the GUI that we're looking at. Hey, it's all good, Mary. It's all good. Hey, I'm just surprised Ryan still has enough space on his ancient MacBook, which is still doing very well. That is vintage MacBook. So yeah, if you don't have enough space, that's one thing you got to be mindful of. Like we said before, it uses your host machine, and you have to have the space for this, right? But you can always clear space off, right? It's totally, or get an external hard drive and move some things over to your external hard drive, I would say, going forward, right? So, and just to tell you, the 4 MB, the reason why I say I'm pretty sure it's not going to be enough is because, and I'm waiting for the pics to load. For some reason, it's taking a while. So I apologize. Okay, so for the image I got from Sarah, I'm not going to show anything else, but this one, Sarah, just comment on this. Um, it's okay to abort the check at this point, right? So if you're loading up and you're doing this for the first time, you can ignore checks. So if you hit the escape key, just redo it. And my question also, uh, working with 8 gigs. All right, that's what I'm talking about, Ryan. I like it. Ryan, Megan, I would tell you to just try it again, close it out, and redo it, and see if you make it through the checks. So one thing about Linux and virtualizing, period, is it can be finicky at times. Is trying to balance a lot of things on your host machine, and Linux itself can be a little unstable at points, right? Because it's trying to work on virtualized hardware that may or may not translate well through the hosted hypervisor, right? So even though it should know how to handle these things, sometimes it does trip up here and there. So whenever it happens, just close it out and restart. Typically, a close out and restart of VirtualBox itself usually fixes what happens. And there's really extreme case, and of course, redo your entire machine by doing a restart. But I would say just close out VirtualBox and redo it again. All right, and I know Mary said she sent one as well. Let's take a look at what Mary sent me. This is, yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is what I was going to get into, right? Is it looks like you got 2 gigs free. 2 gigs of swap space is what it's going to try to create for you. 5 gigs of actual software. So I'm glad you sent this to me because it's kind of what I was getting to, right? So with any of these GUIs that we're doing these we're doing this installation of interfaces. Basically, what it is actually a application, a software running which require resources. So 4 MB is definitely not going to be enough, right? Because um, it takes space to open up an application and to actually run the proper libraries behind it to load those libraries into RAM. But it takes space regardless when it starts creating additional packages and stuff like that, or starts exploding the package, decompressing the packages, right? It's going to take additional space at that point. So yeah, 4 MB is not going to cut it. And it looks like, yeah, if you have an issue with the amount of space you put to the side, let me show you. There's no worry with that, right? I'm going to pause this for a second and go back out to the VirtualBox. If you selected the wrong amount, you don't have to scratch the entire machine. All you have to do is if you did the wrong amount of RAM is you can always just resize the RAM here. Storage, what you can do is actually go into here and do a plus sign, um, add an additional hard drive, okay? And we create, and we go to the settings and we can do a larger hard drive. Yeah, the defaults, I get what you're saying. The defaults are there, but you also want to know what you're going to use, right? So, very good point. Defaults will show up, but I would say definitely ignore the defaults when you're creating your hard drive and your RAM, because defaults are very bare minimum, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't know everything. It has a good guess to what you maybe need, okay? But it's not going to be accurate if you know what you're going to be doing with it later. So yeah, so I would just go through this process here. You can set up another one, and really don't have that much space to be messed with, I guess. So I'm gonna do 10 gigs just to show you what it looks like. So now it's not attached. So what I can do, all right, is search by name. Okay, so that should be done now. Refresh. Yeah. So let's close this out. Oh, hold on. Did not do that. Okay. So create. I think I skipped the wrong thing. Oh, I already have two in here. Okay. And then search by name. I think I just drag it up here. Oh, add. I don't know why I didn't think about that. So add one. You know what? What am I doing wrong here? It used to be not attached. Okay, now it's attached. Okay. I think I did the add button and it worked. Okay. So add new storage controller. Nope. Add new storage attachment. Okay. So now we have both of these hard drives. And now what you'll have to do is when you go into the installation part, you'll now have to look for the second hard drive with the larger space. And I'll show you what that looks like again, okay? So I'm gonna finish this out real quick. All right, password one, done. All right, so I just got another pit from Ryan this time. Let's see where we're at. Okay. Yeah, that's what Mary said she just went through. So you did say you had 8 gigs. Um, so like, so let's go and just take care of this now, right? For your hard drive, make sure your hard drive is at least, like I said, I picked 64 gigs, right? Uh, I would say do at least 20. So now I'm getting this message twice now. I'll just say it now for the record. I would start at least 20 to 40 gigs for your dynamic hard drive. You're not going to use it, and my password didn't match. You're probably not going to use it anyway, and it won't take up any space on your computer if you don't get to that point. Now it will grow until the number you select, okay? So if you do have the extra space, let's go for it. But 8 gigs is definitely not going to be enough, okay? But for just to let you know, this part is what I was saying that if you just added a second hard drive like we just walked through, and in case and because we haven't actually installed it completely, you can actually, excuse me, you can actually just wipe everything out and start back over all together, right? Because you haven't really committed to anything yet. But if you just wanted to have a second hard drive and not go through the steps again, you can actually we have to close the machine out anyway to attach it, I believe. Let me just double check, see if I can attach to a running machine. Settings, storage. Yeah, you have to shut the machine down anyway. So if you're running to this issue now, I would say just scrap everything, do it, start it back over from beginning, and then select a proper size of 20 gigs or bigger. So let's just go with 40. If you got the space, I mean, because you don't have to have it, right? Just select 20 gigs to start with, right? Just straight up do 20 gigs. If we need to, add another hard drive later. So I'm glad everybody's asking these questions because like I said I've never run to these situations. Um, I'm frugal, just not frugal with technology. So I always throw like 40 gigs on my boxes. So I'm glad someone else has experienced something different from me. Okay. Now, before I go any further, I know some of y'all are going to start back over, which don't look at it as too much of a stressor. Uh, as you saw, if you're not talking like I am, you can actually go through it pretty quickly. Literally, you just go in here and, like I said, I could do it real quick while we're doing this, right? CentOS, Linux Red Hat, next. Make sure I do 2 gigs. And I just click anywhere to make it move up. And then I do hard drive, this image, dynamic allocation. Like I said, 32 gigs, right? Create. All right, so Sarah, if it's not working, um, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't run into that situation. I would say let's do a different ISO. Maybe, maybe for you, maybe you might want to try. I'm trying to think of another Red Hat distro. Maybe Red Hat's just not gonna work for you today, right? Or Red Hat distro's not gonna work. You can actually download Ubuntu. So let me show you what that is. Wrong screen. So and this is it's a small download. It won't take you long at all, right? If you go over to DistroWatch, and we'll probably have to like a personal one-on-one session for this. But if you go over to Ubuntu, should be right here, number 32. So go to number 32 on distrowatch.com. Number 32, distrowatch.com. And this is a very small package. And we'll have to figure out how to get your CentOS working after this. All right. Then you could just download the 64-bit ISO. Just click on this and it'll download it for you. Or click on download. Click on word download. And then the 64-bit, you can just do the focal FASO and then save this. Okay. So let's just work with that for you. For whatever reason, CentOS is not working. And it could be something wrong with your host machine, but we have to look into that later, okay? But yeah, So if everyone having a hard drive issue, go back and just start back over and do a really quick spin up, like I'm showing right here. Save it, be done with it, and then load your ISO file. Okay. And then when you do that, it'll load up on the screen and you'll get all this right here. Okay. So I do want to say while we're doing this, and I'm gonna give people time, because we have about 8 minutes left in our session today. I do have daddy duties that start at 9:30, so I gotta take care of that. But we'll use the rest of this time here to get everyone back up to par. If you have the space, please go ahead and do this. If you don't have the space, uh, like doing any of our exercises, you may want to get an external hard drive, a cheap one. Doesn't be more like $20, $30. Just get something cheap, okay? If you can find something that cheap, something to give you a couple 100 gigs. Yes, you did, Ryan. You broke even before we got started. So I'll give you kudos for that. If I give you a round of applause, I would. Yes, you got it. In fact, let me try one of these emoji things, right? Let me see what I got here. Do we have a clap? Clap, round of applause? Yes, I think that's it. Yes, that's the Ryan right there. That's for Ryan. Round of applause for breaking stuff. And Mary, it goes for Mary too. Mary broke it before you, Ryan. Sorry to tell you. But yeah, just start from scratch. And get something cheap, something that like maybe a 100 gig, well, I guess 250 or 100 gigs, something you can use just to play around with this kind of stuff. And you can either use it to, be honest with you, if you're that low on storage, you may want to move some of your personal files onto the external drive as well to free up stuff for your host system. Because honestly, your host system may be suffering as well if you're that low on storage. Um, and then besides that, one thing I want to tell you is, like I was saying, most of the stuff we're doing is applicable in the corporate world, right? So CentOS is close to Red Hat, but mainly what do I want to talk about when it comes to the corporate environment is when it comes to virtualization. As I mentioned before, there's a reason why we do virtualization. It saves in cost in many different ways, not just not really the hardware purchase portion of it, but mainly space. Saves in space and it saves with management overhead, right? Instead of having to walk around and pay someone to walk around to all these machines, and excuse me, um, pay someone to walk around and check all these machines. When a virtual environment, you literally do everything, and of course, uh, you still have to check one or fewer machines. You still want to look at the hardware at certain points, right? Um, but when it comes to checking the actual machines that are running in the virtual environment, it gives you one focal place to look at. Where probably many hosts you have, but one host can manage, I don't know, maybe 100 machines, more than that maybe. And so it gives you one place to manage all those machines that you're running and actually using. So there's no difference between what we're doing today and what your corporate environment will be doing when it comes to the concept of virtualizing. The only thing I can really tell you right now is the number of machines that they have to manage is absolutely a beast, right? It's a large number of machines they're managing, and they would have it set up so that it can be self-healing. And what self-healing is that if, for instance, one of the machines dies and won't boot anymore for whatever reason, it will literally recognize that and it will cut that one off and it will spin up another one using a snapshot. So there's many tools they use to do that, but that's the kind of difference that they have, and we can definitely walk through how to set up your virtual environment to be self-healing as well. Okay, but that's probably the biggest thing that we're not touching on right now is the self-healing aspect. And the reason why is because understanding the virtual technology is more important than understanding how to apply it. So can your virtual um, can your hosted hypervisor, can it support that? And if so, how does that part work, right? When it comes to self-healing, we can explore that together. But yeah, so in addition to that, I would say we'll touch on headless and stuff like that. And I'm just waiting to really see if we're getting any farther with Ryan, Sarah, or Mary. I'm hoping someone got a little further at this point. All right, cool. Ryan says his is installing. So I hope this has helped you out. So Ryan, thanks for getting that far. Sarah, Mary, I know it's late, might be tired, distracted with some things, or it's just not working for you. Let's have a offline set conversation about that. Get that sorted out for you. Okay. All right. Could you repeat what you said? All right, so the question from Ryan is, could you repeat what you said about allocating more storage gigabytes doesn't really impact your host machine, your host itself? So what I was saying about that is, if your host machine, if I remember correctly what you're talking about, I was talking about getting an external hard drive and moving stuff over. All right, Sarah, I'm glad to hear Ubuntu is downloading. All right, cool. So if you get an external hard drive, what ends up happening when you're filling up your hard disk, if you and it says allocating more storage doesn't really impact your host system. Well, I'm saying it does impact your host system, right? If you use too much of your host hard drive, then even your host system itself will suffer without even trying to run virtual stuff. Okay. Now, if you try to run virtual stuff compounded on top of having a lesser amount of hard drive space on your host machine, then you're just making your own problems at that point, right? And so what happens is the more data that goes into your hard drive, then the more power, more I guess what is the word I'm looking for, um, the more effort is on the machine to locate those files you're trying to work with as you use, right? So when it pulls it into memory, stores it back on a hard drive, going back and forth, it has to keep track of those locations it's putting files. And hard drives don't just do serial entries. You might enter one file of let's say 1 gig file might be divvied up into multiple entries places that are not next to each other. Yes. To answer your question, it will work just fine. If you have a 500 gig hard drive, the SSD really doesn't make a difference when it comes to capacity conversations. Performance, definitely a plus, right? But capacity, we're looking at the 500 gig part of it. And you have 200 gigs left, you're fine. What I'm saying is if you had 500 gigs and you were using 450 gigs, right? And let's say you're using, yeah, 450 gigs and you're doing a dynamic allocation of let's say 30 gigs, it wouldn't take you over your max, but if you as you start to use that 30 gigs, it will start to take away from the 50 gigs left. And your machine will start to suffer for that. It'll start having issues. It might even have issues at 450 using some of the hard drive, but it'll start as it gets closer to that, it'll start throwing you alerts. When it gets to a point the operating system cannot function properly, Windows I know does it as well as Linux. It will tell you, hey, your hard drive does not have enough space for me to operate properly, even though you have like a little bit left. And it'll start to give you those warnings. So that's what I was talking about. But yeah, the scenario you gave me, Ryan, you're perfectly fine. All right, so I've done the password. I've done the user creation as an administrator, right? Required the password. I set that up. We're done. And then also check to make sure your network is connected. Make sure this is blue and it has Ethernet saying connected. Okay. And that's it. If you don't have one, you can hit the plus sign. It'll add it in. Most likely it will be there already. It might be off, but most for me it's been on the whole time. Every time I've done this. But I did install previously where it was actually set to be off. It defaulted off, and I didn't know that. And when I loaded it, when I got into my box, I ended up actually having to manually configure my Ethernet connection. All right, y'all. So we spent the whole hour and a half doing this part, which is perfectly fine, right? So that means the next time we talk, we'll do a recap, and then we'll get into Docker. Okay. And my question to you, and you can send me a message personally, you can send me a message on the chat, the comment section for the streams. Uh, what do you want to cover after Docker, right? Because I want to get you in the virtualization space so we can do some of these projects that are coming up later. So hit me up in the chat after the stream. Hit me up on my personal number if you have that. Also, when I get the blog, you can also do the blog, and I'll email everyone that as well. But other than that, I appreciate everyone dropping in again. Uh, I hope we've gotten everyone to the point where you're installing something, whether it be Ubuntu or CentOS. All right. Um, yeah, I feel you on that, Ryan. 8 gigs of RAM is gonna get you, especially running that hard. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for your time and have a good night, and we'll chat again next week. All right. Thanks, y'all.